As you would know, in many episodes, I am a real sucker for is the recoil from a gas blowback rifle. Heck, at a point where even electric blowbacks are my thing, or in general pneumatic blowbacks. But the difference is between the two is, of course, between electric and gas blowback. One has more immersion. The other one is more consistent on its FPS. So, what happens if we put both together? In fact, well, this is also not really a review, but more of a mixture in-depth review at the same time, my personal build of a recoil shock. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of Airsoft Master. And today what we're talking about is more of a in-depth review and at the same time my personal build of the Tokyo Marui Recoil Shock Scar Heavy, also known as the Mark 17. So let's go ahead and talk about it more in depth of what I did to it and everything else. But before we do that, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then also drop a comment down below if you also have a recoil shock yourself. And what do you like about it? Or specifically, if you have any of the other recoil shocks or even the Scar one like I do. And what would you do to yours? But either way, let's get into the video. So why did I choose the Tokyo Marui Recoil Shock Scar 17? Well, I wanted something more unique instead of something more like a typical M4, as we would see more often with recoil shocks such as like the Bolt BRSSs, the KWA ERGs, and of course the Tokyo Marui NGRS themselves. So why not something different like such as the Scar? So I chose that, and reason why was, well, I was actually convinced to get one when I was playing at Hollywood Sports, where it was beaten into me for years after years until, boom, I finally was able to afford one. So let's go ahead and work our way from the front and from the rifle and work our way to the back, and then basically get in a little in-depth details of what we would see on the regular ones to the upgraded version that I did here. So starting off with is you do have is your standard Mark 17 Scar Heavy flash hider out there with the threading that surprisingly should be very familiar to you on the ACHs. Well, specifically from PTS, if you remember these guys still work. So again, it does help out where the flash hider does able to attach to any other suppressors if need be. The one thing I do like about the Tokyo Marui recoil shocks is they do come with that, and to make it a lot nicer, if we listen carefully, music to our ears. So again, it's really nice. Now, of course, let's just knock this out of the room. Is you do have is a different rail at the beginning of the Scar Heavy. 9 times out of 10 it'll be the Picatinny in the back from the 3, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock positions, and of course the long monolithic 12 o'clock on top of the upper receiver of the Scar Heavy. Now I did change it out from, shout out to PTS for making such a good looking rail, is the PTS Kinetic MREX rail system, which can be either it be bought in black or basically FDE. It was so nice seeing this on here where I bought this twice, not only in the black and tan. At the same time, I did buy the first gen version, which is the Mark I of the Kinetic MREX rail. So it's a good looking rail segment where you end up with a multiple sets of M-lock rail segments out there. So such as you see in the accessories, I would put like my foregrip on the bottom and the flashlight on the right hand side, just in case while things get a little bit hefty. But as well to that, it would basically help out with anything and other attachments you would need to put, and different rail segments and positions if you need be, to whatever to adjust to your own use. When it comes to the receiver, I do have to admit is Tokyo Marui does a very good job on the attention to detail. Mainly you do have is your caliber, your serial number, and to show that it is made from FN Herstal, Belgium. But that doesn't stop you from showing how you would want to flex your Tokyo Marui, as you do have the scribe saying Tokyo Marui ASGK inscribed to the lower receiver. Now speaking about the lower receiver, there is one little gripe that I do have for the Tokyo Marui recoil shock is, well, it creaks a good amount where it kind of does make me not so sure about how the durability is. Until I've been playing for this for about 2 years, and it's still held up to date. Where, speaking of which about the lower, you do have is an ambidextrous selector, being safe, semi, and full auto, and an ambidextrous magazine release, including the ambidextrous charging handle that can be changed from one side to the other, to whatever preference you use, from left-handed or right-handed orientation. Unfortunately, the bolt catch stays on the left-hand side, but either way, it's still a good amount of ambidextrous mobility for your own preference. And speaking about preference, let's go ahead and talk about the internals on this gun. As the recoil shock has a simulated weight on the top end of the upper where the gearbox is laid inside, I also have to inform you that the gearbox is very proprietary for the recoil shock in the Scar Heavy, where each one has its own proprietary design to help make the gearbox. As for this one, it is specifically, you'll see on the Scar Light and the Scar Heavy specifically on its own gearbox design. Meaning, you do have to use proprietary parts for your certain gearbox. If you're using a Scar Heavy or a Scar Light, you're going to use a Scar nozzle. You're going to be using the same thing as your piston head, your actual cylinder head. Everything to a T has to be specific to the NGRS lineup, even at a point where the spring is important, as this does not use normal AEG springs, internals, everything, etc. The only thing I can say that can be not really proprietary is your bucking and your inner barrel. Either way, it's still a pretty good basis from there. Now, when it comes to the internals that I did have here, which I have to say they're important, is, well, I did a full overhaul on the gearbox, as I did change this out for full metal bushings. I did a double torque gear set from the Prometheus line, including the nozzle, piston, everything from Prometheus, as you can name it, it is built inside here, including even the inner barrel. The only thing I did keep in regards of most likely stock was my hop-up chamber, as that is more proprietary as well, but you can change it out for more upgrades such as a Lonex or any other type of designs that it follows the same NGRS lineup for the Scar hop-up chamber. Either way, on average, I am using the consistency on this is it's more of a reinforced build to actually control and be able to withstand and higher FPS and somewhat of a little bit of a better speed. And while we get to actually the speed, I will talk about the motor that's inside here, which is normally is an 18K ASG motor. Yes, even though it's different, it's still able to hold inside and be held inside the proprietary grip. I wish I can change the grip on here, but again, more proprietary because it's actually to fill out and be designed to hold the gearbox inside and place the motor in. So, can't change anything about it, but I can change the inside of the motor. So it does help out on that aspect as well. While we're talking about the actual internal parts, let's talk about where we can find the hop-up on the dial. Specifically, it's going to be right underneath when you pull the charging handle and the dust cover of the extractor. You'll see is the dial to adjust your hop-up right there. Again, it's easy and it's a fine-tuning that can be adjusted to whatever weight BBs you're going to use for specifically this gun. A Scar will always be a Scar specifically for its Scar boot. People don't like it, people change them, but again, it is what it is when it comes to a recoil shock is you're stuck with the UGG boot stock. Typical about the UGG boot stock is what's nice is you do have it to be collapsible, ready to go from 1 to 6. You also have an adjustable cheek riser on here, and just in case when you put it in transport, it does fold. Now, in comparison to the other Scars that we've seen, such as the VFC Scars, you're still able to fold it and shoot, as it's direct wired from the gearbox and it goes all the way to the back end of the stock that can be connected. Speaking about connection, you do have for the stock is it recommends a 8.4 volt battery on the back end that's used by Small Tamiya. Surprisingly, we did convert it to Dean's and I did test this out with the LiPo battery. It does still work pretty well. In fact, one of my colleagues that I use this with also use 11.1 LiPo batteries. He's still using the original wiring harness. So it's a luck of a draw. But if you are not really comfortable for it, I would always recommend suggesting and changing out to a gate tighten MOSFET, specifically for the NGRS on here, to help make it more reassurance that if you want to make it more LiPo ready. Now, when it comes to the inner barrel length on here alongside with the hop-up chamber, you will end up with the stock inner barrel being around is the sub 260 millimeters. Now, if you do want to make it more of its true realistic DMR set or more of its battle rifle ready, you can put around more than that 260 millimeters to maybe even a carbine length such as the 363 or even as short as the 300 millimeter inner barrel to whatever sub preference you want to make for this build. As for mine, I do have is more of the 300 millimeters inside, and again a 601 type bore to make it more tighter groupings, as I don't really shoot this as much on full auto. Again, it's more of a DMR aspect. Now we get to talk about magazine compatibility, as unfortunately it's a recoil shock, which is like a gas blowback rifle. We're kind of stuck to whatever mags we can use. Mainly the fact that with the Tokyo Marui recoil shocks, we're stuck with is the 90 round mid capacity mags. But I do like these, as these are more color correct, shall we say, with these mags. And these do have a specific reason, as the latch here will be the cutoff switch. When you do run out, you have to push the actual bolt catch to send the bolt forward, quote unquote bolt forward in the real immersion, but to engage it and to load up your next magazine and then fire the gun again. So when you do purchase a actual Scar Heavy, when you do chrono it, you're going to notice it's going to be around the sub 285 FPS to pass for the Japanese regulations FPS below the 0.98 joules. As when you upgrade it like I did here with all the reinforcement parts, I got mine to be around with the original spring of the 110 around the 375 to 370 FPS out here. Again, it's what you would need to do to make it more outdoor friendly and at the same time more reinforced for that heavier spring. So again, if you do want to change your FPS to be a lot stronger for the recoil shock, expect to change out all the parts to reinforce that hard FPS that you want to put in there. When you do buy your NGRS Scar Heavy, mainly this one out here, it's going to come with is 190 mid-cap magazine, the gun itself, your operation manuals to teach you how to troubleshoot and maintain the rifle. At the same time, you do end up with is your jamming rod and a loader to load your magazine. As per my build and overall consensus of what do I think about the recoil shock, let's be honest, it's a really good looking gun. I mean, I wanted to do something very different when it comes to all my other AEGs, such as an M4. At the same time, didn't want to do a gas blowback because during the time, mags were always expensive, even though these are still somewhat pricey. But either way, the main factor is I wanted something more consistent and something more equivalent to my AEGs, but still have the recoil out there, and this is what we end up with. Again, you can change it to whatever you want. You can change the rails, you can change out the stock sometimes. The internal parts can be changed to be more reinforced. You can do a lot of stuff to making a more battle rifle ready or even the DMR setup. So overall, it is a pretty good basis. While the price range during the time of the recording, it's around the sub $630. It is a pricey gun for a low FPS. But again, you can change everything you want to your own personal build, like as of I did. So what do you think about the actual Tokyo Marui recoil shock? Is this something that you would have in your collection? Drop a comment down below, and then if you're looking for products like these, check it out at airsoftmaster.com. But for this episode, my name's Mike. I'll see you till next time.
This video is brought to you by Airsoft Master.